Peter Sutherland is an FBI agent who works at the White House as a night action telephone operator. His job is to handle urgent calls from night agents who need immediate FBI involvement. One day, a seemingly ordinary man is strangled in his house. Before dying, he tells his niece, Rose, to call for help at a specific number.
Call this number, say night action.
Which turns out to be the FBI night action telephone line operated by Peter. When asked about the code,
"Code, please."
Rose repeats the words given to her by her uncle. Peter then asks her a few security questions, but she fails to answer them since only her aunt and uncle know the answers. The assassins are about to kill Rose too, but she doesn't know how to persuade Peter to help her. Earlier that night, Rose woke up to her aunt and uncle arguing. It is midnight, and there is no cell service or electricity. To find out what is happening, she goes down the hall and overhears her aunt and uncle discussing burning documents and warning Osprey. They believe the country is in trouble and that no one in the White House can be trusted. They also mention some engineer, a drive in the woods, and something happening in 7 days. As Rose goes downstairs to get answers, her Aunt Emma Campbell mistakes her for an assassin and holds a pistol at her. Rose has many questions, but Emma urges her to calm down, telling her there are assassins outside their house and there is no time for answers. Uncle Henry hands Rose a piece of paper with instructions written on it and tells her to go to the neighbor's house down the hill and call the number on the paper.
Take this, go to the Finer's house down the hill.
She has to say night action to the receiver and then ask for help. Rose has no idea what is happening but is told she doesn't need to understand anything. With many questions in her head,
Go!
Rose follows her aunt and uncle's instructions and leaves the house from upstairs. After she leaves, Emma and Henry start searching their house for intruders. During this attempt, Henry falls victim to one of the assassins, who strangles him with a wire, killing him. Meanwhile, Emma is confronted by the second assassin. She tries to fight back but is overpowered, and the assassin shoots her in the head. On her way out of the house, Rose sees one of the assassins. Seeing her running off, the man follows her to kill her too. Rose successfully arrives at the house down the hill, where she uses a phone to call the number given to her by her uncle. The number turns out to be the FBI night action telephone line operated by Peter. She says, "Night action," and Peter asks her for the code.
"Code, please."
Rose gives him the code but doesn't have answers to the security questions. When she tells Peter that her Aunt Emma and Uncle Henry gave her the number and that they are in danger, Peter decides to help her. With the assassin approaching, Rose seeks refuge in a closet, placing a mirror in the room so she can see if the assassin is coming her way. Meanwhile, the assassin is seen knocking down the bathroom door,
He's breaking down the bathroom door.
which Rose locked earlier on Peter's instructions to divert his attention. Realizing he has been tricked, the assassin makes his way to the room where Rose is hiding. Suddenly, someone opens the closet door, holding a flashlight. Luckily, it is a police officer dispatched on Peter's call. Rose breathes a sigh of relief before hugging the officer and thanking him for helping her. Meanwhile, Peter informs his boss, Diane Farr, the White House Chief of Staff, about the night action call. She instructs Peter to take Rose away from the local police and hide her somewhere safe that even Diane doesn't know about.
To get her away from local PD. Find out what she saw.
Though Peter's job is to take night action calls, Diane doesn't want to trust anyone in this case, not even the deputy director of the FBI, Hawkins, who is at Rose's house to escort her.
I'm Jamie Hawkins, Deputy Director of the FBI.
Hawkins introduces himself to Rose and informs her about her aunt and uncle's demise. Rose is unable to comprehend what is happening. She believes that her aunt and uncle were loved by everyone, so there is no one who would think of killing them.
No. Everyone loved them.
Before Hawkins can take Rose for further questioning, Peter arrives and takes her away. They stop by Peter's apartment to grab some essentials, while Rose heads inside his room to get some clothes from his wardrobe. Peter opens his secret safe, grabs his pistol, and leaves both his and Rose's phones inside. After placing a camera on the shelf, he leaves the apartment with Rose and the important stuff. Outside the apartment building, Peter notices two men chasing them. Acting swiftly, he takes down both assailants before they can harm him and Rose. When asked why they want to kill Rose, the men respond that they are not after her but Peter.
We came for you. What?
They claim Peter tried to blow up the metro last year. Though Peter refutes this accusation, a flashback reveals what happened a year ago.
Ma'am,
You can take my seat.
No, it's all right.
Peter was on a train when he noticed a suspicious man placing a bag under the seats. After the man left, Peter checked the bag and found a bomb inside. He pulled the emergency stop lever and showed his FBI badge to the passengers, ordering them to get off the train.
Hey, FBI! I need everybody to exit the train!
When people realized there was a bomb, they rushed to get off, causing chaos. As Peter got off the train with a little girl, the bomb exploded, killing one person and injuring several others. While receiving treatment, Peter noticed a man in the crowd who matched the bomber's description. Despite feeling unwell due to a concussion, he chased after the man but lost him in an alley. Suddenly, the man attacked, sparking a fight between them. Amid the chaos, Peter saw a snake tattoo on the bomber's body. When the man attempted to flee, Peter pursued him until he was struck by a car. Despite his efforts, Peter failed to apprehend the real culprit that night. Matters worsened when a radical conspiracy theorist claimed on his podcast that Peter was responsible for the bombing.
Confess your involvement in last year's DC Metro bombing, huh?
This belief gained traction after people discovered that Peter's father, who had also been in the FBI, was a traitor. When the podcast began gaining attention, life became increasingly challenging for Peter. He started encountering harassers on the streets. He ignored them most times, but when they slandered his father as a traitor and accused him of committing unthinkable, Peter would lose his temper. He repeatedly told the public that his father died in a car accident before any charges were even made.
Killed himself in order to keep himself out of the car accident.
But the rumors gained more traction than his explanations. A video captured by a harasser went viral, further complicating Peter's situation at work. Back in the present day, Peter holds the harassers at gunpoint and instructs them to stay put until the police arrive, threatening to report them to the FBI if they continue harassing him. He calls Diane and urgently requests her to send police to his apartment to deal with the harassers. Meanwhile, in the car, Rose asks Peter about her aunt and uncle. However, Peter has instructions from Diane not to disclose anything to Rose just yet. Suddenly, Peter notices a car tailing them. He speeds up and tells Rose to call the night action line on his phone. The same assassin begins shooting at Rose's car, shattering some windows but narrowly missing Rose. As Rose spots the man, she realizes he is the same assassin who killed her aunt and uncle.
That's the guy from my aunt's house.
To evade the assassin, Peter engineers a deliberate accident to hinder the assassin's pursuit before making a quick getaway. Finally, he and Rose arrive at an Airbnb booked under a different name.
It's an Airbnb. It's under my friend's account.
After getting treatment for her forehead injury, Rose presses Peter for answers. She wants to know who Peter really is, why assassins are after her, and why Peter answered the call that night. Peter finally reveals the existence of the counterintelligence program.
It's a counterintelligence program.
Rose mentions that her aunt and uncle were in acquisitions, but Peter explains that people in such roles wouldn't have access to a night action line, indicating they were likely agents. When asked why she's being chased, Peter suggests that the assassins might believe she saw something or knows something critical. He advises Rose not to panic but to trust Diane and to fully disclose everything she knows during the debriefing the next day. While Rose sleeps that night, Peter remains vigilant to protect her. Monitoring live CCTV footage from his apartment, he spots two individuals breaking in. He immediately calls Diane and requests backup. FBI agents already stationed nearby for emergencies rush to Peter's apartment, but the intruders have disappeared by the time they arrive. Peter reviews the CCTV footage and notices one intruder wearing a distinctive ring with a logo or symbol on it. He takes a screenshot of the ring and sends it to someone for further investigation. The following day, Peter drops Rose off at a building where she is scheduled to debrief with Diane and Hawkins. Rose insists on Peter accompanying her inside. Before the debriefing, Rose confides in Peter about overhearing her aunt and uncle discussing a mole in the White House.
I knew there was some kind of mole or something.
She expresses reluctance to trust anyone from the White House, unsure if Diane or Hawkins could potentially be the mole themselves. As Peter waits outside, Rose is interrogated by Diane and Hawkins in the room. Despite their questioning, Rose refuses to divulge any information.
You saw his face.
I saw his figure, not his face.
Including the fact that she saw the assassin's face. Hawkins becomes suspicious that she knows more than she's letting on, but Rose remains steadfastly silent, frustrating Hawkins. Meanwhile, we see the assassin, Dale, with his partner Ellen, approaching a woman outside her house.
I'm sorry, we didn't mean to disturb you.
They are holding a baby to appear as a normal family. Ellen mentions feeling nostalgic about the house where she spent her childhood, which convinces the woman to invite them inside. Once inside, the couple kills the woman by strangling her with a wire. Afterward, they leave the house with a bag, presumably containing whatever they were after. On the other hand, Peter escorts Rose to her hotel room, where she will be staying under Secret Service protection. Despite not holding a formal position, Peter is invited to a meeting with the Chief of Staff and Deputy Director of the FBI by Diane. She believes his connection with Rose could help uncover what Rose is concealing. During the meeting, Hawkins informs the group that Emma and Henry Campbell primarily worked in counterintelligence,
The Campbells work for us. Counterintelligence.
particularly recruiting foreign assets domestically, but they retired a few years ago. This suggests their recent activities were unofficial and off the books. After the meeting, Diane instructs Peter to thoroughly investigate Hawkins, suspecting that he may be hiding something. Following her orders, Peter enlists the assistance of another FBI department to delve into Hawkins's background and the significance of the ring he noticed on Dale's hand earlier. Later that day, Peter reviews some of the Campbells' mission files and discovers evidence suggesting that Hawkins was their former FBI handler. Although it's not explicitly documented, signs point to Hawkins having played a role in their operations. Peter promptly informs Diane, who advises him to keep this information confidential between them for now. They agree to uncover why Hawkins concealed his past association with Emma and Henry before taking further action. Later that night, Peter's night action line rings. But this time, it's Rose on the other end. She reaches out to Peter simply to have a conversation, feeling isolated in her hotel room. They talk to alleviate her boredom, and before ending the call, Rose invites Peter to have breakfast with her the next morning.
Can you have breakfast with me tomorrow?
After finishing his shift, Peter takes a quick shower and heads to the hotel to have breakfast with Rose. However, upon arriving in the lobby, he notices that the Secret Service agents assigned to protect Rose are missing. Sensing trouble, he questions the receptionist.
Excuse me. Hi. Where are the Secret Service agents that were here?
Suddenly, the power goes out, signaling a serious threat to Rose's safety. Armed with a pistol, Peter rushes to Rose's room and alerts her to the danger. Just then, Ellen and Dale approach Rose's room, intending to harm her. Peter and Rose manage to evade them, but Dale spots them in the dining hall. A shootout ensues, but fortunately, no one gets injured. Going through the kitchen, Peter and Rose seek refuge in a storage room. They break a window, hoping to leap from the building to escape their pursuers. First, Peter steps onto a glass floor outside the building, but his weight causes it to shatter, sending him plummeting to the ground below. He urgently instructs Rose to jump, but she hesitates out of fear. With Dale closing in on their hiding spot, Rose reluctantly jumps from the building to escape. After escaping from the hotel, the duo head to a clothing shop to buy some clothes for Rose, who is still in her robe. While there, Rose steals a phone and directs Peter to contact the White House to determine who ordered the removal of her security detail at the hotel. Peter calls Diane and updates her on the situation. Diane promptly interrogates Secret Service representatives Almora and Briggs, pressing them for answers about who authorized the removal of Rose's security detail from the hotel. Briggs checks the system and discovers a command was issued 30 minutes ago to disengage their agents, a command that can only be authorized by Diane, Almora, Briggs, and Hawkins. Diane becomes increasingly suspicious of Hawkins, who is currently missing from his office, and no one knows where he is. She urges Peter to bring Rose to the White House for protection, but Peter and Rose remain hesitant to trust anyone.
I'm taking care of Rose.
Peter assures Diane that he will personally ensure Rose's safety until they uncover who is responsible for endangering her. Rose decides to take an active role in uncovering the truth about her aunt and uncle's investigation and whom it threatened. They start by visiting her uncle's house, hoping to find clues that could aid their investigation. There, Rose recounts everything she overheard on the night of the incident to Peter. When she mentions her uncle talking about a drive in the woods, Peter suddenly realizes that it might refer to a hard drive.
Be like a hard drive?
Intrigued, they decide to search her uncle's cabin in the woods. After a thorough search, they eventually uncover a hidden drive concealed behind a brick in the fireplace. Rose, being the owner of a cybersecurity company, attempts to decrypt the drive but finds it heavily encrypted.
A folder with a name on it, but it can't be opened.
It requires advanced technology such as FBI or Secret Service computers. Among the files, one is named 2781. As Peter reads this, he recognizes it as the number of the metro train that was bombed. This revelation suggests that the Campbells were investigating the bombing, but the reasons behind their involvement remain unclear. In order to gain access to the encrypted files on the hard drive, Peter realizes they need FBI assistance. He contacts Diane through the Night Action line and asks her to investigate who ordered the removal of Rose's security detail.
Did you ever figure out who pulled her protection detail?
Diane reveals that it was Hawkins. The command originated from a computer in his office. Shockingly, Hawkins cannot be questioned as he has already been killed. Upon hearing about the hard drive and its potential link to the Metro bombing, Diane urges Peter and Rose to return to the White House immediately for their safety. Peter agrees to be there within an hour, but Rose hesitates. She is reluctant to hand over crucial evidence to someone who could potentially be responsible for her aunt and uncle's deaths. After the meeting with the FBI and Secret Service concerning the deaths of Rose's aunt and uncle, President Michelle holds Diane back for a private discussion. Diane expresses her frustration to Michelle, questioning why a retired couple like Rose's aunt and uncle were sent back into the field and what necessitated such action. In response, the president decides it's time to disclose everything to Diane. The next day, Peter and Rose stood atop a hill, waiting for assassins to arrive at the cabin. They needed to ensure Diane wasn't the mole. If she was, she could track their cell phone's location from the previous night's call and send assassins to eliminate them. Hours pass, and Peter finally breathes a sigh of relief, convinced his boss isn't involved. His relief is short-lived when he spots Ellen and Dale,
That's him.
the assassins, approaching the cabin. He reluctantly acknowledges Diane's involvement in the conspiracy, believing she had sent them. After disposing of their SIM cards, Peter waits for Dale's car to depart. As it drives off, he notes down the license plate number and promptly requests his trooper friend to issue a BOLO for the vehicle. After dropping Rose off at dinner, Peter heads straight to the White House to deliver the drive to Diane. The plan involves using the FBI's computer to crack the encrypted content and then sending the data to Rose's laptop. To pull it off, Peter distracts Diane by having her talk to Rose over the phone in his office. He secretly picks up Diane's keycard and gains access to the room where the decryption of the drive is taking place. Inserting a USB into the computer, he allows Rose to access the files. With all the files decrypted and transferred, the hard drive in the FBI's computer is now empty. Rose has to hang up the phone after she notices some policemen at the dinner.
I have to go. Rose, no.
With Rose gone, Diane tries to get back to work but finds herself unable to unlock the door to the room without her keycard. Meanwhile, Peter returns to his office and hides the keycard under some papers, making it appear as if Diane forgot it there.
Here it is.
When Diane retrieves her card from Peter's office, she returns to the computer room only to discover the hard drive empty. Spotting a USB inserted into the computer, Diane immediately suspects foul play. Someone intentionally deleted the files.
It's empty. The hard drive.
Peter becomes her prime suspect, especially since her keycard was used to access the room. When accused of collaborating with the assailants, Peter confronts Diane about who disclosed their location to the attackers at the cabin. He suspects she tipped them off since she was the only person he contacted. In response, Diane swiftly hands her mobile phone to an agent, instructing him to scan it for spyware. She then divulges everything she knows about the case, hoping to demonstrate her trustworthiness. Diane reveals that the president authorized an intelligence investigation outside the regular chain of command. Following the Metro bombing, the FBI was at a loss, with no leads, credible suspects, or motives. A statement initially attributed to the PIF party was later disowned by its leader, Omar Zadar. The CIA spent months listening in on their leaders but found no mention or confirmation of the attack. Feeling she wasn't getting the full story, the president called on two old friends from her Senate intelligence days, Emma and Henry, Rose's aunt and uncle, to investigate further.
They suspected someone inside the White House of being involved with the Metro bombing.
This is the reason why the culprits killed them, but the FBI hasn't still uncovered any leads on the mole yet. Diane suspects the mole must be someone senior enough to place spyware on her phone and obtain Rose's hotel details. She had hoped to find concrete evidence on the now emptied hard drive Peter handled. Diane assures Peter she is not part of the conspiracy,
I did not send anyone after you and Rose.
But she is unsure if she can trust him anymore. On the other hand, Rose returns to the motel and reviews the contents of the drive. To regain Diane's trust, Peter accompanies her to Rose's motel. Diane urges Rose to hand over the drive's contents, promising to share the details with the president. She believes the president, who tasked Rose's aunt and uncle with the Metro bombing investigation, is on their side. However, still reluctant to trust anyone at the White House, Rose insists on solving the case with Peter. Reluctantly, Diane agrees to this arrangement. Using information from the hard drive, Peter and Rose locate an engineer's address and head there in search of leads. They find a house in the countryside owned by an elderly woman and inquire about Emma and Henry. Initially, the elderly woman, Lorna, denies knowing anyone by the names Emma and Henry. However, when Rose mentions a childhood event that occurred in the area,
I came here as a kid. I rode a pony over that ridge.
Lorna invites her inside the house. Rose explains the situation and asks if Lorna knows anything about her aunt and uncle's work. Lorna reveals that she supplied them with blueprints for public infrastructure and building schematics in the same neighborhood block. The schematics are too complex for Peter and Rose to decipher on their own, so Lorna agrees to accompany them to the location in the blueprints. At a local cafe, Lorna shows Rose how her aunt and uncle were interested in gathering intelligence on nearby grids and gas lines. Meanwhile, Peter is in the restroom when he feels a slight tremor caused by the metro passing beneath the city blocks. This prompts him to consider whether the metro bombing last year was a mistake. The explosion occurred at that specific location because he stopped the train, but what if it needed to be exploded someplace else? Lorna and Rose once again check the neighborhood schematics only to find that a major gas line bisects the train tunnel.
Major gas line that bisects a train tunnel.
Learning this, Lorna tells Peter and Rose that if something were to hit that gas main, it would take out 2 full city blocks. She advises the duo to determine what the White House traitor failed to accomplish a year ago. This is the only way they can prevent it from happening again in 4 days, as claimed by Rose's aunt and uncle before they were killed. The duo thanks Lorna for her assistance. After Lorna leaves, Peter receives a call from his friend, who informs him about the whereabouts of Dale's car. Peter and Rose join the officers outside the house where the assassins are illegally staying, leaving Rose in the car.
You gonna be okay in the car?
Yeah.
The armed men raid the house to apprehend the assassins but find it empty. Unbeknownst to them, Dale and Ellen are at Lorna's house, interrogating her about what she told Peter and Rose.
Her FBI friend. What did you tell them?
Once they gather the information they need, they kill Lorna and bury her in the woods to cover their tracks. Back at the motel, Rose reviews the CCTV footage of the neighborhood found on the drive while Peter receives a call from Diane. She informs him that the Secret Service has discovered spyware on her phone, possibly explaining how the traitor tracked Peter to the cabin. When asked about progress in the case, Peter reveals that Rose's aunt and uncle uncovered evidence suggesting the metro bomb was intended for a different target. Concerned about another imminent attack,
We think there's gonna be another attack.
Diane urges Peter to come to the White House and share all the details with the FBI. While Rose reviews the CCTV footage, Peter notices a Secret Service agent, Chelsea. She was sitting in the cafe speaking into a microphone for several hours,
She's not talking to herself, she's talking into a mic.
indicating she was likely on someone's protection detail that day. Peter begins to suspect that the metro bombing wasn't a terrorist attack but an assassination attempt,
Attack anymore, this is an assassination attempt.
possibly targeting the person Chelsea was protecting. In their quest to uncover who Chelsea was protecting on the day of the metro bombing, Peter and Rose approach her at a university campus where she is guarding Maddie Redfield, the vice president's daughter. Peter queries Chelsea about her protectee during the metro bombing, but Chelsea declines to divulge any information without an official request. Pressed further, she agrees to seek permission from her superior, Secret Service Director Ben Almora. Almora not only denies Chelsea permission to disclose any details but also confronts Diane about her unofficial investigation with Rose.
An off-the-books investigation, quite honestly.
He argues that such off-the-books activities with a civilian are unacceptable. Meanwhile, Peter and Rose speculate that if Maddie was the intended target during the metro bombing, they need to uncover who orchestrated the assassination attempt against her. With no breakthrough from the drive, Peter and Rose shift their focus to a new angle. Their primary lead on assassin Dale is a picture of his ring, identified as Yugoslavian. To learn more about the ring's significance, Rose heads to a library for more research. Meanwhile, Peter approaches Mrs. Hawkins to inquire about anything her late husband, Mr. Hawkins, might have left in his office. Mrs. Hawkins informs Peter that there is nothing left in her husband's office, as the FBI had thoroughly searched it. She expresses the difficulty of dealing with her husband's death and the added pain of others labeling him a traitor after his 30 years of service. When Peter shares how his own father was similarly accused of treason and passed away before proving his innocence, Mrs. Hawkins realizes that Peter empathizes with her situation. Feeling a sense of understanding, she opens up to Peter about her husband's investigation into the Metro bombing case.
And he was working on the Metro bombing case for a while.
She reveals how Hawkins discovered inconsistencies in the FBI's investigation. Peter learns that Mr. Hawkins suspected interference in the FBI's investigation. Despite the Bureau having a list of suspects,
The Bureau already had a list of suspects.
none were linked to Omar Zadar. However, the FBI continued to focus on Zadar as the primary suspect following the leak of a false statement from his party. Hawkins revisited case files and discovered evidence pointing directly to a government contractor named Turn Lake Industries. On the day Hawkins disappeared, he had a secret meeting with the CEO of Turn Lake Industries. Additionally, Hawkins had a personal connection to Rose's aunt and uncle, having served as their handler in counterintelligence. Their deaths deeply affected him, and he was visibly emotional that night. Mrs. Hawkins doesn't know how Turn Lake Industries is connected to the Metro bombing, but she believes that her husband was close to uncovering something significant, which may have led to his murder.
Their deaths were personal to him.
She urges Peter to continue investigating the Metro bombing to expose the real traitor. Meanwhile, Rose discovers that Dale was a suspect in the disappearance of Andrei Pavelich, a member of a defunct royal family. The crest on Dale's ring matches that of Andrei's family, suggesting Dale stole the ring after kidnapping that guy. Rose informs Peter about these findings and reveals that before his disappearance,
Andrei Pavlich, he was part of some defunct royal family.
Andrei had been vocal in the press about Turn Lake Industries, an American defense contractor, conducting covert operations throughout the Balkans. Everything, including the deaths of Rose's aunt and uncle and the Metro bombing, points toward Turn Lake Industries. Peter calls Diane to share these revelations. Upon learning that Peter has substantial evidence to launch an investigation against the company, Diane instructs him to return to the White House immediately to present everything to the president.
You and Rose need to get your asses back to the White House right now.
After the call, Rose informs Peter that a significant amount of money from Turn Lake Industries went to Vice President Ashley Redfield. This suggests a potential exchange of favors between Redfield and the company, making him a suspect in potentially being the White House traitor. Rose conducts a search on Turn Lake Industries' CEO
Name is Gordon Wick.
and discovers photos of him with Vice President Redfield. Convinced that Redfield is the mole, Peter directs Rose to print all the incriminating evidence so they can present it to the president. They prepare to head to the White House, unaware that Dale and Ellen have covertly placed a tracker on their car. On the other hand, Vice President Redfield's daughter, Maddie, abandons her security detail and runs off to spend the night with her art professor. During their date, a man named Mateo suddenly appears in Paolo's apartment, frightening Maddie. It becomes evident that Paolo and Mateo have some history as they argue. Paolo insists that this wasn't their agreed plan. Mateo shoots Paolo and takes Maddie from the apartment. Paolo intended to have Maddie advocate for his environment-saving organization, but Mateo had ulterior motives from the outset. Agent Chelsea is deeply upset about Maddie. Not only was she her protectee, but Maddie had also become an integral part of her life. While she is discussing with her team how to locate Maddie, Agent Eric Monks informs her that he noticed a spark between Maddie and her art professor.
Notice anything strange with her art professor?
They rush to the professor's location, only to discover him dead. Maddie's dress is found there, leading them to conclude that she has been abducted. Meanwhile, Peter drops Rose off at his trooper friend Cisco's house before heading to the White House to brief the president on the Metro bombing case. Dale and Ellen wait near Cisco's house while Chelsea and Eric conduct a thorough search of the professor's house and the art gallery. In the art class, they discover a portrait of a person with a distinctive rattlesnake tattoo on his back. Searching Maddie's room, they find a pamphlet from the Environmental Justice Organization where Paolo volunteered. In a photo on the organization's page, our agents identify Mateo in the background, recognizable by his tattoo. On the other hand, Peter meets with Diane in her office and explains how Turn Lake Industries is linked to the Metro bombing, revealing it was actually an assassination attempt disguised as a terror attack. He discloses Vice President Redfield's involvement and his connection to Turn Lake Industries CEO, Wick Gordon. Peter also warns that whoever Chelsea was protecting that day is the real target and could be attacked again soon. Shocked by this revelation, Diane decides to immediately brief the president. Peter assures Diane that Rose and the drive are safe, prompting Diane to instruct him to bring Rose to the White House. Before she leaves, she advises Peter to have his trooper friend drop Rose off at the loading dock. After Diane leaves, Peter realizes she's involved in the conspiracy. He hadn't informed her that Rose was with his trooper friend, suggesting Diane collaborated with the villains who trailed Rose to Cisco's house. Peter quickly calls Rose and alerts her to Diane's betrayal.
What? You're sure?
Meanwhile, Diane is seen talking to Wick Gordon, confirming her involvement in the conspiracy. Aware that Peter now knows their entire plan, she resolves to have him arrested. Simultaneously, Wick's assassin prepares to eliminate Rose to prevent her from exposing them. Peter directs Rose to leave Cisco's house and meet him at the pier.
Get out of there right now, okay?
Meanwhile, he prepares his own escape from the White House. Aware of Diane's intentions, he discreetly obtains a colleague's keycard through pickpocketing and heads to the basement mechanical room. Simultaneously, Diane accuses Peter of being a traitor who has kidnapped the vice president's daughter. The entire White House security force is mobilized to apprehend him. Guards search the mechanical room but fail to find Peter, who cleverly hides in a box until they depart.
All clear. Entrance is secure.
Once alone, Peter uses the password he observed to access the emergency exit, finally escaping from the White House. On the other hand, Rose and Cisco are en route to the pier when they realize they're being followed. To protect Rose, Cisco drops her off in an alley and drives away to divert the assailants. Despite Cisco's efforts, Dale spots Rose in the alley. As Dale pursues Rose, Ellen intercepts Cisco's car and fatally shoots him. Meanwhile, Dale closes in on Rose, but before he can harm her, Peter intervenes and knocks him to the ground. A fierce fight ensues between the two, with Dale gaining the upper hand by landing relentless punches on Peter's face. Rose steps in, striking Dale with a wooden branch. Peter seizes the opportunity to hold Dale at gunpoint, but Dale emotionally manipulates Rose by recounting the tragic fate of her aunt, saying she begged for mercy until the end. Overwhelmed by the presence of her aunt's killer, Rose lashes out at Dale. Peter attempts to shoot Dale, only to discover that his magazine is empty. In a desperate bid to protect Rose, Peter resorts to using his arm to strangle Dale, ultimately bringing an end to Dale's life. On the other hand, Diane reveals to the vice president that Peter and Rose have uncovered a connection between him, Wick Gordon, and the Metro bombing. She proposes using Maddie's kidnapping to their advantage.
You want to use Maddie's kidnapping?
Though the vice president doesn't want to involve Maddie in this mess, he has no other option to prevent himself from getting exposed to the public. Following Diane's instructions, he holds a press conference where he publicly accuses Peter Sutherland of kidnapping his daughter.
His name is Peter Sutherland.
Chelsea and Eric are shocked by this turn of events, as none of the evidence points to Peter being the kidnapper. Meanwhile, Peter and Rose seek refuge on his godfather's boat. There, Rose tends to Peter's wounds and provides him with the comfort and support he needs. Chelsea and Eric are under strict orders not to pursue anyone else but to focus solely on capturing Peter. However, despite the orders, they approach a member of the Environmental Conservation Organization to inquire about Paolo. The member reveals that Paolo told him about bringing Maddie into the organization to amplify their message.
He talked about bringing Maddie around here sometime, but it hasn't happened.
When shown the sketch found in the art class, the member recognizes the man as Matteo. He doesn't know much about him, only that Matteo started dating Paolo 8 months ago, and he hasn't seen him for weeks.
But I haven't seen him for weeks.
On the other hand, Wick Gordon, Turn Lake Industries CEO, receives a message from the kidnapper, showing a video of Maddie pleading with her father to rescue her. Matteo demands that the vice president confesses to the public that he orchestrated the Metro bombing in exchange for Maddie's release. The vice president is desperate to bring his daughter back and is willing to comply, but Diane and Wick intervene, making him realize that Maddie has turned against him. She was preparing to expose him publicly herself.
Maddie was getting ready to publicly humiliate you.
Diane then gives the VP Maddie's nanny cam, revealing how Maddie intended to publicly humiliate him with a video. Maddie's therapist ratted her out to Diane, who had Wick send his assassins to retrieve the evidence Maddie had concealed. The nanny cam contains footage of Maddie confronting her father about what happened to her sister Sarah, who died from drowning in the pool.
Sarah drowned because of you, Dad!
This is the footage Ellen and Dale killed the woman for. The vice president watches the video and realizes the extent of his neglect and emotional abuse towards Maddie. However, he wants to make things right, even if it means ruining his own political career. Diane warns the vice president, reminding him that he involved her in this situation and she cannot allow him to ruin everything now. At the White House, the president discusses Peter with Diane. Diane informs her that Peter appeared last night to declare he is no longer working for them. She speculates that Peter must have abducted Maddie to leverage information about his father and is also holding Rose hostage.
He's holding the Larkin girl hostage now, too.
On the other hand, Peter struggles to come to terms with the news of his friend's death. Together, they deliberate their next steps, and Rose proposes using the colleague's badge Peter previously stole to access the FBI's case files on the Metro bombing.
Wait, you grabbed somebody's badge at the White House?
They examine the suspect lists, and one name, Colin Worley, catches their attention. He was discovered dead just 2 days after the bombing, but it appears authorities overlooked his suspicious death. Rose points out they can't hack into county records to gather more information about Colin. Instead, they'll need to visit the Public Records Office to uncover more details. Back at the White House, Eric convinces Diane to authorize an investigation into Mateo, suggesting he may be their best lead to finding Maddie. However, Diane insists that Peter remains the primary suspect in Maddie's abduction.
Yes, Peter Sutherland remains the primary suspect.
After their discussion, Diane contacts Wick and inquires about Mateo. The name doesn't initially strike a chord with him until he sees Mateo's sketch. Meanwhile, Maddie attempts to persuade Mateo to collaborate, expressing her shared hatred for her father and her desire to expose him to the world. She's willing to work with Mateo,
Planning for my father. We can do it together.
but he resolutely refuses to let her charm influence him. Mateo sternly warns Maddie to speak only as instructed, emphasizing the consequences if she deviates from his commands. After trying begging and persuasion techniques, Maddie decides to take a proactive approach. She starts punching a hole in the wall, determined to find a way out. Meanwhile, Ellen discovers her partner dead, floating in the river. Driven by desperation and a thirst for revenge, she confronts Wick, pressing a knife to his throat and demanding his assistance in locating Peter. Wick proposes a deal. If Ellen helps him locate Maddie, he will uncover Peter's whereabouts in return. On the other hand, Rose arrives at the Public Records Office with the intention of obtaining Colin's case files. Through clever deception, she convinces the woman to hand over the documents without requiring any formal paperwork. Meanwhile, some conspiracy theorists spot Peter outside the office. Upon noticing them, Peter relocates his car, inadvertently drawing the attention of these individuals to Rose. They surround Rose, accusing her of aiding a traitor.
Are you helping that traitor?
Before they can involve the police, Peter intervenes with a signal pistol, firing it near the harassers to create a distraction and allow Rose to escape the situation. Meanwhile, Chelsea and Eric search through Peter's office and discover cards from his godfather, Jim Wilson. They approach him, hoping he might have information about Peter's whereabouts. Jim denies any knowledge,
I don't know where he is. I don't know where he's been.
but shares with the agents that Peter is unlikely to be capable of kidnapping the vice president's daughter. After Peter's father passed away, Jim conducted his own investigations, but he consistently found evidence that Peter's father was a traitor. When Peter learned of Jim's conclusions, he felt deeply betrayed, causing a significant rift between them. Upon seeing a photo of Peter and Jim in front of Jim's boat, Eric asks Jim if he still owns the boat.
Is that your boat?
Jim reveals its location, mentioning that Peter may not remember where he docks it. Peter and Rose examine Colin's documents from the Public Records Office and discover that he previously worked at Allentine Manufacturing,
Key card to a company called Allentine Manufacturing.
a subsidiary of Turn Lake Industries. When Peter sees Colin's arrest photos, he notices the same snake tattoo he had seen on the bomber's back during the Metro incident.
Because the guy I chased that night had that exact same tattoo.
Peter suspects that Turn Lake Industries orchestrated Colin's death to conceal their involvement in the Metro bombing. Determined to uncover more about Colin, they plan to visit a P.O. box listed in Colin's autopsy report, hoping to find information about his next of kin, his activities, and the target of the bombing to prevent another assassination attempt. However, as they prepare to leave for the city, Chelsea and Eric intercept them. During the interrogation, Rose reveals to Chelsea and Eric how the vice president and Diane framed Peter after he discovered their involvement in the Metro bombing.
Vice President Redfield and Diane Farr are framing Peter.
To substantiate her claims, Rose urges Chelsea to open her backpack and examine the evidence she has gathered about the bomber.
I have the evidence in my backpack.
Upon seeing the bomber's face, Chelsea recognizes him as Mateo, confirming Rose's story. Rose's explanation persuades the agents to listen further to their side of the story. As they discuss, Peter and Rose uncover the shocking revelation that Maddie was kidnapped by Colin, now operating under the name Mateo. Eric examines Colin's birth certificate and discovers that he is a twin. It is then revealed that Wick had ordered the assassination of Colin, but mistakenly, Colin's twin brother, Mateo, was killed instead.
Okay, so they murdered the wrong twin then.
Now, Colin is using Mateo's identity to seek revenge against the vice president. His plan involves kidnapping the VP's daughter and exposing his true nature to the public.
Confess to the world that you planned the Metro bombing.
Peter proposes to the agents that they collaborate since they share a common goal of finding Colin. Convinced by Peter's narrative, Chelsea and Eric agree to give him another opportunity to work together. To gain access to the P.O. box, Chelsea and Eric visit the post office and discover that Colin has a storage room registered under his name.
We send these out when someone's late on their rent.
While searching through the storage room, they uncover evidence revealing that Colin had been meticulously gathering information about Maddie for months.
Mateo must have been planning this for months,
with the intention of eventually kidnapping her. Meanwhile, Maddie continues punching a hole in the wall until she notices a number and hears a passing train. When Mateo returns to the room, Maddie persuades him to record another video, suggesting that the person he is delivering the video to may not be showing it to her father. Mateo agrees, and Maddie carefully crafts a message in her own words, urging her father to confess to the Metro bombing.
Make a video confessing your part in the Metro bombing.
Instead of providing her father's number, Maddie gives Mateo Chelsea's number. When Chelsea receives the video, she recognizes that Maddie is using their coded language to send her a message.
I think she's turned it into a code.
When she wants Chelsea to focus on a word, she taps her necklace. After carefully reviewing the video, Chelsea and Peter identify the words train or 142.
Numbers 142.
They conduct research online and discover that her 142 is part of a shipping container number. Chelsea intends to share this information with the team at the White House, but Peter advises against it.
People you can't trust in the White House.
He warns that if the information reaches the wrong person, they might realize that Chelsea and Maddie know about the Metro bombing, making them targets. Eventually, Peter persuades Chelsea to collaborate on finding Maddie. Chelsea promptly informs Eric that Mateo is holding Maddie at the DC Container Depot.
He's holding Maddie at the DC Container Depot. We'll text you the partial.
They quickly make their way to the container yard, gear up, and begin searching for the R-142 container. Upon spotting the agents on the CCTV cameras, Mateo decides to move Maddie before they can reach her. However, as he opens the container to take Maddie away, she stabs him in the back with a sharp metal object and escapes. Mateo retaliates by firing a gunshot, confirming his presence to the agents. After a tense pursuit, Peter finally apprehends Mateo. Maddie is rescued safely, and Mateo is arrested. Unbeknownst to the agents, Ellen has positioned herself on top of a nearby tower, intending to take revenge on Peter for her partner's death. Upon seeing Mateo, Ellen follows Wick Gordon's instructions and fatally shoots him. A shootout ensues, during which Maddie is shot in the leg. Eric is tragically hit in the chest. Before Ellen can target anyone else, Rose intervenes by throwing Ellen off the tower, leading to her death. Peter and Rose manage to escape before backup arrives. Chelsea instructs Maddie to remain silent about Peter and Rose's presence when questioned by the police or anyone else.
But for now, you didn't see those two. You sent me the video.
Sadly, Eric succumbs to his injuries. The vice president is finally relieved that his daughter is rescued. Diane suggests that they must find out what Maddie and Chelsea know and what they believe. In a flashback, it is revealed that Diane was not originally involved in the Metro bombing. After the incident, Vice President and Wick Gordon admitted their roles in the bombing. Diane was shocked by their attempt to assassinate a foreign politician on U.S. soil and endanger American lives. The vice president tried to justify their actions by claiming Zadar was a terrorist, but Diane knew that they were more concerned with maintaining their business contracts with the current Balkan regime. She was angry with the vice president, but he insisted they needed her protection to safeguard the president. If they were caught and faced charges, it would jeopardize the president as well. They leveraged Diane's loyalty to the president to ensure she protected them.
You're trying to use my loyalty to POTUS to save yourself.
In the present day, Chelsea undergoes debriefing but avoids mentioning Peter or Rose. She informs her superiors about the video.
She was accusing her father of being involved with the Metro bomb,
but maintains she never believed the vice president had any involvement in the Metro bombing. FBI Director Willett decides to review the video, aware that the kidnapper Colin was a suspect in the Metro bombing, despite Diane dismissing him as delusional. At night, Maddie overhears her father discussing plans to issue pardons the following day, indicating his intention to assassinate the president. This would enable him to assume the presidency and gain the authority to grant pardons. Peter takes refuge at Jim's house, where Rose searches through Ellen's phone and discovers a photograph of the night action binder from Peter's office.
That's the night action binder.
To trace who took the photos, Peter and Rose visit Diane's assistant, Val's house. They restrain Val non-violently and gain access to the system using her laptop.
Peter?
Yep.
We got the access logs.
They uncover evidence showing that Diane's card was used to access the office at the time the picture was taken. With this proof in hand, Peter and Rose now have grounds to initiate an investigation against Diane. They send the proof to Jim. Shortly after, Chelsea calls them. Knowing Chelsea had mentioned protecting Omar Zadar previously, Peter asks if she has discovered where he will be staying tomorrow. Chelsea confirms she has checked the schedule but hasn't found Omar Zadar's location yet.
Blair House says there's no plans to have anyone there this week.
It dawns on her that the president will be at Camp David, potentially meeting Omar Zadar there. Peter doubts that the VP targets Zadar at Camp David, considering the president's presence. Maddie then reveals what she overheard about her father planning presidential pardons. The group realizes that the vice president intends not only to eliminate Omar Zadar but also to assassinate the president of the United States. As expected, Zadar's plane lands in the USA, and the Secret Service picks him up to transport him to Camp David for his meeting with the president. On the day of the attack, Diane packs her belongings as if preparing to leave the country. However, Peter intercepts her at her home and demands that she call the vice president and instruct him to halt the assassination attempt on both Zadar and the president.
Contact Redfield and Wick. Tell them to call off the assassination.
Diane is visibly shocked to learn that Wick and the vice president altered the plan to include the assassination of the president. She attempts to contact the president, but she is unreachable. Peter insists that Diane must accompany them to Camp David to help prevent the attack.
We're going to Camp David.
On their way to Camp David, Diane attempts to justify her involvement in the conspiracy, but Peter and Rose are unmoved by her explanations. They are solely focused on stopping the impending attack. Despite Diane's regrets and intentions to save the president, Peter and Rose remain distrustful. Meanwhile, the vice president and Maddie are en route to Camp David, where the president plans to meet Maddie to offer consolation after her kidnapping ordeal. Chelsea accompanies Maddie as her security detail. During the flight, Chelsea notices agents carrying briefcases, which triggers a suspicion that one of them might contain a bomb. Upon arriving at Camp David, the vice president swiftly escorts Maddie to an underground bunker designed to withstand explosions. With Diane's assistance, Peter and Rose successfully infiltrate Camp David. Diane urgently notifies Secret Service Director Ben Almora about the bomb threat.
There is a bomb at Camp David,
and advises him to evacuate the president. Before Almora can fully grasp the situation, a Secret Service agent, Briggs, loyal to the vice president, enters the hall and shoots Diane. Almora attempts to retaliate, but Briggs overpowers and shoots him twice before fleeing. Peter tries to pursue Briggs but fails to apprehend him as he escapes. With communications down, They're unable to warn the president's protection detail about the bomb threat. Despite her injuries, Diane informs Peter about a crucial communications building at Camp David that controls all operations. Rose suggests that if the outage is due to a cyber attack, she can potentially resolve it.
Well, if it's a cyber attack, maybe I can fix it.
Amidst the chaos, only the radios belonging to the vice president's team remain functional. Briggs coordinates with his team and sets the bomb timer for 10 minutes. Chelsea grows suspicious of Walter, a guard associated with Briggs, and subdues him, discovering the timer on his watch. Meanwhile, Peter and Rose head to the communications building to address the cyber attack. They encounter resistance from an agent stationed there, but with teamwork, they manage to overpower him. The agent's walkie-talkie confirms his involvement in the vice president's plan.
POTUS should be arriving any minute.
Allowing Peter to learn that the operation has commenced. Nathan's collaboration with Wick becomes apparent, driven by the leverage Wick holds over him.
We have 6 minutes.
Meanwhile, Chelsea diligently searches for the briefcases and eventually discovers them. True to her suspicions, one of the briefcases contains a bomb. Thanks to Rose's efforts, the communication systems of the Secret Service agents are restored. Chelsea quickly alerts the president's detail about the bomb inside the building.
There's a bomb in this building. You need to get everyone out now.
The agents swiftly evacuate the president and Zadar to safety. Simultaneously, Maddie confronts her father about the truth, and he finally admits his role in the Metro bombing.
It was all mine, Maddie.
As Maddie persistently urges her father to let her leave the bunker, the vice president reluctantly agrees. Outside, she is escorted out by Chelsea just before the bomb detonates. Chelsea's swift action ensures that no lives are lost in the explosion. Meanwhile, intercepting communications from the rogue agent, Peter learns that a second bomb has been placed on Marine One.
Contingency evacuating POTUS to Marine One now.
The helicopter intended for the president's evacuation, evading pursuit from U.S. Marines and Secret Service agents, Peter manages to intercept the president's protection detail. In a tense standoff, he shoots one of the rogue agents and holds the president hostage, demanding that the Secret Service search the helicopter for the bomb.
There's a bomb on Marine One!
During the standoff, Peter reveals to the president that the vice president is involved in the plot to assassinate her.
The vice president's involved in trying to kill you, man!
Shocked by this revelation, the president orders her protection detail to thoroughly inspect the helicopter for any explosives. As two soldiers follow orders, they discover the bomb on Marine One, narrowly getting out of the helicopter before it explodes, preventing further casualties. Meanwhile, Chelsea confronts the vice president in his bunker, shocking him profoundly. Redfield is arrested, with Maddie agreeing to testify against him in court. Wick flees the country, while Rose ensures Diane remains alive to face trial and imprisonment. At Peter's request, the president reveals that his father confessed to selling the country's secrets, but it was part of a plan to act as a double agent for his country's benefit.
He'd agreed to become a double agent.
Ultimately, his father was innocent, but he was assassinated before he could fulfill his new role as a double agent. Impressed by Peter's dedication and loyalty, the president recruits him as a full-fledged night agent in the program.
How would you like to be a night agent?
Peter and Rose, now a couple, embark on a new chapter in their lives, filled with hope, love, and fresh opportunities.